from Chicago, it's Startup Hype Man, the podcast. What's up, everyone? My name is Raj Nation, founder and chief pitch artist at Startup Hype Man, where we help startups not suck at how they pitch themselves. How? By making sure their audience sees them not as the best, but as the only. And this podcast is the only show where you will hear from leaders in the startup ecosystem sharing a piece of their heart, their mind, and their story on how they are charting their own path, growing their companies, and choosing not to play the game, but to change the game. Before we get going, hit the subscribe button on your podcast app so you never miss an episode. Also, head over to startuphypeman.com and subscribe to our Point of View letter, where we share original articles, insights, and resources, all to help you become the only of your industry. All right, get your popcorn ready and get hyped. It's showtime. Ladies and gentlemen, making his way to the microphone from Chicago, Illinois, and currently residing in Austin, Texas, he is the co-founder and CEO of Postie. Please welcome Dave Fink.
That was awesome. My childhood fantasy was, just realized. Incredible. Thank you for that.
He is Dave Fink, as I mentioned, co-founder, CEO of Postie. Postie is a data and technology platform with the mission of making, yes, listen to this, direct mail sexy again. They're bringing direct mail back the way JT brought sexy back, helping direct mail behave as dynamically as the best digital marketing channels that you actually have quantitative oversight on. They're able to do that for direct mail. Now, over the last 5 years, they've taken a small seed round and been able to be profitable year over year, every single year, scaling to a point where they've got customers in industries from big box retail to automotive to telecom to financial services, all the way from midsize to multi-million-dollar publicly traded companies. More and more people are realizing the value of Postie. And in their journey, and this is our season 18 premiere episode. So I'm really excited to talk with Dave today about this specific topic and kick off the season with this specific topic, because in Postie's journey, they've learned one thing really, really well, and that is the most effective channels to scale your ICP, your ideal client or your ideal customer persona or ideal customer profile. Dave, right off the bat, why is this on your mind and why is this important to you?
Yeah, well, look, I grew up in the age of the internet and started my career in kind of the consumer internet space, both working on marketing technology solutions and also direct-to-consumer brands that got their advantage from kind of understanding kind of this evolution in direct-to-consumer marketing and technology, and really what kind of drove, I think, innovation and efficacy in that world was the understanding of data, and how to leverage that data to gain insights into who your ICP is, who the various segments within your customer base is, and then to be able to leverage that knowledge to much more efficiently allocate marketing budget, storytelling, brand development, and customer retention. And we've now lived through 20 years of innovation, education, awareness in digital, to the extent where when I think folks like I started in this industry, the marketing saying was always like, you don't get fired as a CMO for buying TV. And now we're in a world where you don't get fired from being a CMO for buying Facebook and Google. And what that means is those channels have become really saturated, really challenging. They certainly still have a tremendous value in the marketing stack, but you no longer can develop world-changing brands and scale just focusing on those kind of emerging channels. It's time to think about what other channels you can bring into your media mix and at the same time, I think we've all been, spoiled with this idea of being able to leverage data, measurement, real-time deployment, rapid and dynamic, iterative testing. And all those things are possible in direct mail. They just, the channel has been, big and impactful for many years, but has been lacking innovation on the technology and efficiency side. And kind of, I think just the kind of shrinking ceiling in social and search and programmatic that we've seen over the last 6-7 years, encouraged my co-founder Jonathan and I to really take a look at how we could unlock some of the how we could unlock the power, the full potential of direct mail in a way by leveraging kind of the learnings in technology, software, and execution that we've invested 20 years on the digital side for.
We are going to dive all into that topic a whole lot more, and how anyone listening can effectively scale their channels or scale their, use the right channels to scale their ICP, I should say. Before we get into that, let's learn a little bit more about David, the person. Now, Dave, before we hit record, we were just catching up, and you mentioned you started your career actually working in Chicago, in social services, in fact. I'm curious, that experience, and you mentioned you were going into different government housing communities, meeting with people there. What did that experience teach you about the human condition and about human behavior?
That's an awesome question. And it's been so long. It's not a topic that many people ask about anymore. I think early in my career, they asked a lot, of those kind of questions and how you learn from. I had a degree in psychology and thought I was going to go and get a PhD in clinical psychology and work with people. And kind of migrated into world of ad sales and, initially. And I think that the transition was fairly natural for me. And I think it's just because I always had a deep interest in understanding people, and with a heavy focus on communication and rapport building, which I think is necessary, whether you're going to be a counselor and trying to work with, challenge populations that have challenges, and oftentimes, those individuals are a little bit guarded, and the best way to be able to provide, help or value there is to build authentic relationships. And I think that's true in sales for sure. And I do think that translates across, running a business as well. I sell every day, and I certainly build rapport every day. I'm not doing it directly to clients, on a regular basis. We now have, our own enterprise sales team and our own enterprise success team that gets the fun of that job. But I am selling to every employee in our company, right? Helping them understand the mission, the value that we provide. I'm helping them get motivated to continuously invest in their careers and think about, the hours they spend on their jobs as more than just a job. And I think if you talk to the various teams that I engage with here, I'm a student of the game. I'm not the biggest fan of reading things like sales books or pure leadership books. I gravitate more towards, behavioral economics and social psychology and industrial psychology. And I think maybe that early kind of love for education and research and understanding, with a heavy focus on communication and rapport building, I think that applies to pretty much your entire life, every aspect of it, but certainly to I think leading a fast growing organization of diverse group of people.
And do you feel that approach kind of speaks to, you've written before, especially even in your bio section on your LinkedIn profile, about how you're really driven by the intellectual pursuit more than, or at least as much as, achieving things. Do you feel like that's really what's coming through here, is this idea of the intellectual pursuit?
I do think so. I'm painfully aware of it. I certainly think that if I was purely chasing financial wealth or some very tangible, core outcome. The question comes up all the time from investors and potential candidates that we're looking to hire, like, what's your exit strategy? And the answer is not something I think about at all. What I think about is how we build something meaningful, and I think that ties into I think that's probably the number one motivating factor, right? I want to add value to the ecosystem. I want to build something and lead something that's mission driven. I want us to help make the industry and that we're choosing to focus on the advertising world a better place, and help brands find value, help marketers have an easier time with their job. I talk in terms of when we with our sales teams and our success teams, when we walk into a quarterly business review with a client, like I want us to have swagger. I want us to walk in, and I want us to not just come in with so much knowledge and so much value add, but make it fun and engaging, so that everyone from the CMO, maybe even the CEO of some of the mid-cap companies that we work with, to want to be in that room, because they're going to learn something, they're going to be entertained, they're going to enjoy the process. And I think that ties into your question of, it's the intellectual pursuit. It's it's certainly the journey more than the outcome at the end. And I hope that translates through to my team, and I think that if we're sitting down one-on-one over coffee in a intimate conversation with one of our employees, I think that's how they would talk about the tone of Postie and the leadership that Jonathan, my co-founder, and I kind of choose to embrace. I certainly would hope so.
Well, as a startup hype man, I'm all about the swagger. And I think that's a great element to have. In fact, when we, for our demo coaching clients, when we do like monthly group reviews with them, we always kick off those meetings playing some rap song. And then whatever like the theme or like the main lyric of that rap song is, like the meeting starts with everyone has to go around and say like whatever win they had in the last month, like in the context of that rap lyric. So like, Drake's recent song, Way Too Sexy, was like, everyone had to go around the room and be like, I'm way too sexy because I just closed an enterprise deal 2 weeks ago, and it just makes it a better experience than like, I think starting with wins is great, but if you can add a little bit of flair on top of that, it makes it something people like, just have that like added like fun in being part of your ecosystem.
I love it. I love it for several reasons. One, like music is like the ultimate like emotional, like artistic medium, right? Like it's impossible not to like feel something when you hear music of various genres. Easiest way to pump you up. I was a very mediocre high school hockey player, but like my favorite moment was like when we took the ice and at a home game and we got to pick the soundtrack and then blast in the stands, and Friday night game, and we were you're pumped. I love that stuff. Certainly COVID, and we're acting as a fully distributed company, like many companies right now, has made it harder to, I think, to pull a lot of that kind of culture and emotional connection vibe off. It certainly couldn't have been done before there was teleconferencing, but it does put a lot of pressure on us to think about ways to kind of create that same energy and that fun. We are definitely spending more time as our company gets bigger with just the number of individuals and people not getting to interact one-on-one as intimately as they used to. We look for ways to get people together, whether it's teams or all hands. Now that I'm in Austin, I'm pretty much obsessed with both mountain biking and wake surfing. And a while ago, we got the sales team together and rented some wake surf boats, and everybody got up and we were, playing music and just hanging out in the sun together and doing some bonding and embarrassing ourselves by trying a new sport that most of the team hadn't tried before and getting in the water and whatnot. Like that stuff really matters, right? And then if you can figure out how to translate that kind of energy and fun and confidence into your relationship with clients and your product development and your marketing and how you're amplifying your story. I think there's definitely opportunity to create something that's beyond just your product or beyond the revenue that you're generating.
Let's use that as our transition into the main topic today, which is the most effective channels to scale your ICP. I think in order to appropriately understand that in the context of your journey, can you just briefly talk through how Postie got started in the first place and maybe just expand a little bit more on that very, very brief introduction I gave at the beginning of the episode?
Sure. So, the setup is, prior to Postie, 15, 16 years, I'm kind of oscillating between building marketing technology, always with, kind of that quantitative performance mindset, data-driven, test and optimization, measurement, kind of rinse and repeat. And then also building direct-to-consumer brands that, reached, oftentimes levels of tremendous scale, hundreds of millions of dollars a year in revenue, mostly direct-to-consumer, at least that's how they started. And we're challenging, big monster multi-billion-dollar incumbents, and data was everything, knowledge was everything, and then finding channels that you could actually execute on that knowledge, which started out very limiting in 1999 and 2000, and fast forward to 2011, 2012, 2015. With the growth of social and search and programmatic and retargeting and email and SMS and all these quantitative channels, like it became easier or more possible than ever before. Easy is not a fair term, and that's the reality. Is I look a lot older than I probably am now because it hasn't been easy. Reason I bring that up is that the 6 or 7 years prior to launching Postie, I was one of the founders of a tech studio in Santa Monica called Science, and we invested both in marketing technology companies and built and launched and incubated them, but also direct consumer brands. And we worked with certainly plenty of brands that had reached a certain level of success, companies like Dog Day Kate, Dollar Shave Club, et cetera. And we rode the coattails of the emergence of social, and we got there faster than most brands got there, and we were able to take advantage of kind of all of those data-driven tools, and so you take like Dollar Shave Club, and everybody knows that brand because of the funny videos and the brilliance of Mike Dubin's storytelling, but that story had to get amplified somehow, and if it was just straight to TV, nothing but TV without any kind of measurement, that would have been a really expensive way to build a company and build a brand. But they also had YouTube, which was a quantitative channel. And they also had, the distribution on Facebook and search and programmatic. And you put those things together and something really special happens. We started Science, it was about 2010, 2011. And by the time 2016 rolled around, those same brands that had gone from zero to, in some cases, hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue with millions of customers, we're now, freaked out because, they've they grew on top of Facebook. They were big. It becomes harder to find more growth the bigger that you get. And they also had some headwinds, which were everyone, every brand, no matter whether they were a challenger brand or a major entertainment studio or automotive manufacturer or CPG brand, was pumping ad dollars into social and their marketplaces. And so the more demand that goes in, the more expensive the supply becomes. And it became this kind of asymptotic path to profitability, where the more you spent, the less profitable your customers were, the higher your CPAs would go. And it just something needed to give. And so for us, we kind of looked around and said, like, what are other big, massive, scalable channels that could be run in parallel with our other, quant channels? And in online, there really wasn't anything. Snap did not really have an ad platform at that point. They were just kind of figuring things out. TikTok didn't exist. And so, for us, we started looking offline, and direct mail was a channel we had some experience with years and years ago. And it had three things that we loved. It had scale everyone is reachable through direct mail. Everyone that lives in an address is reachable, right? Over 270 million Americans, about 160 million households. Two, there's quality data out there that you can use in the same kind of predictive way as you do through building your email CRM segments or your Facebook lookalike models. And three was most brands had kind of some kind of identity mapping where there's direct measurement. You know who you're sending a piece of mail to in an ad campaign. You know who's coming and converting at your POS or website. And now you could measure just as cleanly, if not more cleanly, than on digital. And so we got really excited and we set out to just use the channel as marketers, and really quickly learned how painful and slow moving and kind of lacking sophistication and efficiency that the channel was. There just hadn't been any innovation on the marketing technology side of it. And so for us, it was this idea of like, well, I wonder if it's possible to do what Twilio did for SMS, or the Trade Desk did, or DoubleClick did for programmatic, or Criteo did for retargeting, and Facebook did for social, and Google did for search. I wonder if it's possible to build that technology layer to make the direct mail channel behave more dynamically. So that was the path. It really was that authentic and organic of a story.
So given that, if we think about like how you were getting that off the ground, and then as you think about how that may even apply to other companies, what was your process for determining the right ICP in the first place? Because I feel like there's a million different directions you could have gone with this.
100%. And look, that's still something that, a kind of mid-growth stage company like us struggles with. There's only so much you can do at any given time, sanely and quite frankly, effectively. When we started, because we, grew up in that kind of challenger brand space, it was a space we knew really well. We understood, how those businesses, launched, how they scaled, kind of when they struggled. We understood kind of the mindset. It was just natural for us to start there. And so both kind of the way that the user interface was designed, kind of the initial campaign types that that we made possible to execute on the platform, kind of all aligned with kind of what these fast growth, venture backed, really sophisticated challenger brands needed, and so that's where we started. And very early on, we would sit down and say, hey, what if, you had the same level of sophistication and tools to run direct mail, just like you run search, social, programmatic. 101% of individuals that we engaged with said 100%, like that, like absolutely, we would totally experiment with that. Get us off of Facebook. We're feeling that pain. Help. And like you don't get better product market fit than that. That doesn't mean that people will pay for it, or or that you'll immediately deliver results. So there is like that curve. But with regards to substantiating that there is a pain point, there is a need, and that that sector in the market got it, that happened very quickly. About a year later, we kind of jumped to the opposite end and started engaging with the biggest enterprise companies. You mentioned in kind of the opening, multi-million-dollar publicly traded companies. We're talking about tens of billions of dollar market market cap companies. Fortune. Even we work with some of the Fortune 50 companies, and we got there pretty quickly because the tools that they need are exactly the same as the challenger brands need. If you think about the way Facebook worked, initially, they didn't invest in marketing technology. They didn't want measurement, so everything was as big brand dollars. And then they very quickly learned that they could leverage machine learning and big data science investment to actually drive performance, that they had something special. And I think the first category that they catered to was app installs. So that was kind of the wild, wild west of venture dollars were just flowing into any app that met certain KPIs. And Facebook proved that they were a really efficient and scalable way to drive app installs. And that was kind of the light bulb went off. I'm like, oh, well, we could probably work with e-commerce companies and direct to consumer brands and lead gen and service providers, and so, in our world, we kind of have this bookend approach where we sell and service, the enterprise, brands that are oftentimes very deeply invested in direct mail, but still, running a pretty, fairly, antiquated approach, just not because they're not smart or capable or they wouldn't want to run something more sophisticatedly. There just was never a platform. And so for them to be able to now leverage software and technology to test and optimize and activate audiences differently than they were able to do in the past, I think it's very powerful. And we're seeing tremendous results there. We're certainly still catering to the fast growth, and even, some of the brands that we work with in the challenger set are now, $50 billion market cap companies on NASDAQ. And then others are, Series A and Series B funded companies. So that's happened really quickly. We've only been a business for 5.5 years. I think it makes us feel good to know that we've built something that does add value to pretty much the full marketing ecosystem out there. And we got to just keep getting better at telling, our ICPs our story, letting them, recognize the value that we drive, and then servicing those accounts, at the highest level.
Well, I think what's interesting, even if you think about that, going to the big brands approach, like some of these massive organizations, while I don't know, maybe they're harder to get into, or it just takes a little bit more effort to get into initially. They're the ones who have probably had legacy spending in the direct mail category and probably kept seeing declining results. But if you come to them with, hey, I can get you better results, or I can help you actually track what's behind that spend and understand the channel as well as you're understanding these other channels, I feel like, because it's something they've already been used to spending on. And I think generally speaking, when we think about sales, this is such a key thing, have they already opened their wallet for something like this in the past? Because if so, they're probably going to be more receptive than if it's the first time they've ever spent money in this area.
Look, it's a great, I think it's a great perspective and pretty darn spot on, quite frankly. So we think about, the kind of the lay of the land in kind of one of those X and Y axis kind of 4-quadrant views. And it's really simple at the highest level. We go down deeper into, verticals and deeper data, but at the highest level, it's, is a challenger brand on one side of the axis, or is it an enterprise brand? And then, are they currently deeply invested in direct mail, or are they on the opposite end of the spectrum? Have they never done direct mail at all? Right. And you can look at those 4 quadrants, right? So there's certainly one quadrant that tends to be a bit of a quicker sell, but that has much more variance in, kind of their trajectory on the Postie platform. And that's, not doing direct mail, challenger brand. And we love those brands, because they look and feel a lot like many of the brands that we've launched in the past, so that we hold those challenges they have and opportunities that they have close to our heart. But they're brands that are typically run by very small, very smart marketing teams, highly quantitative, data-driven, and they get it in a heartbeat. They feel very comfortable leveraging the software. But as you said, they haven't opened their wallet for this channel yet. So it's still hey, we hear direct mail is, crushing it for many advertisers. Is it going to work for us? And so those brands tend to definitely be more like start, stop, right? Like Facebook's easy. Like I said, nobody gets fired for buying Facebook, and nobody gets fired for buying branded search. But there are other channels like direct mail that can be a make it or break it, channel for you. But does take some investment and consistency. And so those brands aren't quite there. On the complete opposite end of the spectrum, there are, the Capital Ones of the world, spending hundreds of millions of dollars year over year in direct mail. It's probably their biggest channel. It is highly effective. They've been doing it for decades. And those obviously are harder brands to break into because they have systems that have worked for them. But they're also very, very savvy and recognize there's always ways to find incremental performance. And so those sales cycles may be much more challenging. But when you are able to onboard one of those accounts, they tend to be much more consistent. And businesses need both of them, right? Those businesses, the enterprise clients, come on, and they're difference makers with each one that onboards. They year over year, like when you think about like net dollar retention, like doesn't scale the way that a digital native that gets their Series B and finds tremendous success, and all of a sudden they're growing their commitment 400% year over year, sometimes 1,000% year over year. You need both, and you need diversity in your client book.
Today we're talking about this idea of ICP growth and channel scale. Let's also talk about product scale for a second. Now listen, everyone, creating an app is easy, but making it stay afloat on the market is definitely not. In fact, about 4 in 5 apps launched in app stores get deleted after a single use. Harsh, I know, but true. So how do you thrive without a profound product strategy experience? Well, luckily, you're not doomed to failure. You just need an experienced partner that can help you all the way through. And I'm proud to bring to you now a new partner of Startup Hype Man, the podcast this season, and that's Mikito, the team of design, software development, and product strategy experts who have built over 150 successful products for startups and enterprises. Yours might be next. How do you find out? Well, maybe just talk to them and join forces with Mikito. I'm excited to have them as a partner of the show for this season. And so to find out more and learn if your product can scale up and to be successful like some of the other greats that have come out, just go to mikito.com/hypeman. That's MIQUIDO.com/hypeman. Mikito.com/hypeman, MIQUIDO.com/hypeman. Today on Startup Hype Man, the podcast, we're talking with Dave Fink, co-founder and CEO of Postie, and our topic is the most effective channels to scale your ICP. So let's talk about this channel growth now, Dave. And I really want to actually learn first is like, so you get the ICP down. What have you observed? Like, and maybe you made some mistakes as well you can speak to, but like, where do you see companies go horribly wrong, either in their segmentation, not so much on their segmentation, but where do you see them go wrong on determining the channel or channels they should be pursuing?
Oh, that's a great question. Look, I think where folks went wrong years ago is slightly different than maybe where they go wrong now, but the principles are still the same. So when I would run marketing teams, I would empower various team members to constantly be exploring new channels, looking for additional ways for to be growing. And everything started with this idea of allocating a certain percentage of your monthly or quarterly media budget to testing. And testing falls into 2 buckets. It's testing new strategies, tactics, creatives, offers, ads, cadences in your existing channels, and it also is testing new channels altogether. The kind of the biggest I think mistake that I would see is someone would show up in a meeting and be all excited about this new channel that they wanted to test, and they'd walk through kind of what they learned and what the cost model looks like and how we onboard and what tools we need. And then someone inevitably would ask, like, awesome, like how scalable is that channel? And they answer, often has to be like, it's not that scalable. And you'd be like, well, let's say like we invested all this time and energy to kind of test, and in an ideal world, like it proves to be like a really efficient channel for us. Like, how big could it be? And they're like, oh, not that big. And that sometimes it's just frustrating, because if you're like, hey, there's a channel that lines up really nicely with our business and we think we could be highly efficient, it could be a highly efficient part of our media mix, but there's no scale behind it. The answer is like, well, why would we put all that time, energy, and budget at risk if there's no scale? And so it's always kind of I always kind of push teams and individuals to think about this idea of like, opportunity cost as much as budget cost. You don't want to be spending a ton of time on something that, even if in the best case scenario does perform successfully, doesn't have scale and there's no path to scale. So that's one mistake. On the executional side of things, there are two, I think, buckets of mistakes that I see all the time. One is that you go into a new channel and you throw some budget at it, and you kind of test something, and there's no starting hypothesis. So maybe it's directly measurable. Maybe there's all sorts of cool tools and levers that you can pull to test, and you put a bunch of time and energy, and you allocate some budget, and you throw it out into the world. And then you start collecting data, and the answer is was it success? Or the question was it successful? And the answer is I don't know. And it's why don't you know? She's well, I don't know. How are we thinking about, success and defining success? And that happens all the time. We're going a mile a minute. We get excited about something new. We have so much pressure. We're trying to get to our next round of funding. We're trying to get to our next quarterly earnings, report, whatever, whatever that kind of KPI is that makes us run around like crazy people all the time. If we don't take a minute to catch our breath and actually, like a scientist, right? You asked earlier, are there parallels to studying social psychology or industrial psychology and business? And the answer is absolutely. You can't just go into an experiment with Reese's monkeys and have this cool experiment and then not have any idea or framework of what you're trying to uncover.
Yeah. What are you trying to measure or even study in that process?
Yeah. It's great that you touch here in their brain and they do that, but what were you trying to figure out? And that's important too, right? Because if we take that, monkey experiment example, right? Theoretically, you give a group of monkeys some Reese's or something, there are actually a million different things they might do, but it's important to understand what is the thing that I'm trying to get out of this experiment, not just what's everything that possibly happened. What am I focused on for the intention of this experiment? So you don't get sidetracked, right? Yeah, look, I before this podcast, I took my 1-year-old, 80-pound,
gave him some Reese's.
yeah, I'd be cleaning up a lot of messes right now. But took her for a walk, and we're doing a mediocre job at best training her, and I just don't think like a dog trainer. And so, on this walk, she's strong as an ox. She pulled me down the street, and we're working on leash manners, and she's pulling, and I'm yanking back at her and saying no. And I'm well aware that what am I trying to teach her? I'm teaching her that if she pulls, I pull, and then she pulls again and I pull, and then it's tug of war. And I'm not thinking in terms of okay, be patient when she, slows down and starts walking without, a tight leash. I should be rewarding her. And I don't have all the time in the world or patience to be the greatest dog trainer, which is probably a bit of a disservice to this wonderful creature. We do the best that we can, but the point is even those little moments, it's the same thing. It's rewarding positive behavior, going into it with a mission, understanding what you're trying to accomplish. I'm not trying to get her to accomplish pulling against me, or I'm trying to get her to think, oh, I get rewarded. Dad is really happy with me when I'm walking next to him versus yanking him down the street because, I saw a squirrel. And so I think, again, same thing is true with testing. The other piece that I think is a mistake that's happening less and less over time, but still happens, is not fully embracing and taking advantage of all the first party data that we now have on our customers. Right. So, we're collecting data every day, right? If we're a direct to consumer brand, we're seeing every single transaction. If we have an app or a website and we're an omnichannel brand, we're seeing engagement, site visits, app behavior. We could be seeing lead gen connectivity. If we're B2B, we could be seeing what content pieces, someone's engaging with and how long they're spending with that content. If, we're tracking POS transactions, loyalty, programs and average order value and cadences or intervals between transactions, like all that data, is leverageable to understand, A, are we doing an effective job with our customer sets? B, understanding that not all customers are the same, that there are different segments of customers and there are ways to kind of get at insights into like why different segments of customers are engaging with our brands. Like there are probably multiple reasons and multiple profiles. It's not just one ICP, it's multiple ICPs. And then, if we have the insights, that leads to better hypotheses. Like now we're like, okay, like I see these three distinct, buyer profiles. I have some questions about why, what it is about our product or our marketing messaging that's either working or not working within those, where they spend their time in the world. Are they commuting? Are they on, on Instagram? Are they on TikTok? Are they, are they more likely to engage with their mailbox? Are they, if they're commuting, maybe out of homeworks? Like, are they cord cutters and should I be focusing more on OTT and CTV and ATV, or are they still people that I should be targeting through linear? Like all those things that we used to have to guess at. We now have so many ways to collect data points and kind of start with insights. And so that's hard work for sure. And there's sometimes some costs associated with it. There's some deep thinking associated with it. But those brands that are spending the time on the front end or partnering with channels or solutions that allow them efficiencies to unlock the power of the first party data, gain insights, create hypotheses, test, and then measure those results. Like that's not every channel. Do you get all of those checkboxes? But the more of those checkboxes you can get from each core channel, the more in control you are of your business and the growth of it.
So then let me give two questions here real quick before we begin our wrap up. So given all of that, and maybe we can let's use, my company as an example, perhaps. When we think about trying to figure out what is the right North Star metric for a specific channel, because I think those go hand in hand, right? Like what's the channel, but then what are you measuring against? For Startup Hype Man, our most successful channel is actually doing partner workshops. So we team up with another organization and we do one of our pitch workshops, and we have 4 or 5 of them that we do based on the type of the audience. And on my side, I've created these. I don't have to change them. I mean, I know how to make slight modifications in the moment, but I don't have to recreate slides every time. So there was an upfront time cost investment whenever I first created these, but then each time I do it, that cost continues to go down, or it's exponentially less because I'm not recreating it. I'm just relaunching what I've done before. And again, knowing how I might need to improv in the moment. So I'll stop it there. Now, from your assessment of that, right? What would be the right metrics? Either metrics singular or metrics plural? What's the right North Star to be going after if that's the channel that we pursue at Startup Hype Man? Sure. I will answer it, but first, I want to just draw a parallel to something you talked about earlier, which is like we talked about music, right? And you're talking about rap in particular. Rap and R&B and pop even has done this brilliant thing over the last for decades, but it became more popular like the last probably 10, 15 years, which is collaborations. Right? Like think the about artist feature. Yeah. Right. But think about that, right? Like that's exactly what you're talking about doing, which is, hey, whether it's, record label trying to launch a new artist by putting him or her on tour with opening for a major headliner, or whether it's a collab on an album or sampling, it's pulling together other people's audiences in order to find, efficiency and amplification, more conversation, and that's like, I just think that's absolutely brilliant. Which I don't know, by the way, on that point, because I that's a lot of what my inspiration was, like looking at how hip hop does it. I don't know how the rock world never figured that out, because like, it's so funny. Like an everyday occurrence is like Jay-Z featuring Kanye West, but like you never saw Led Zeppelin featuring Aerosmith ever. And if it did happen, people's heads would have exploded.
I would love to see that. You didn't see that, but you did see covers.
Covers, yeah, but not necessarily like true, like they co-created a song together, you know?
No, that didn't happen a ton. There were back in the day, like Dirty Little Secret is a lot of even those bands, had writers that were writing,
Yeah, they'd borrow each other's talent, yeah.
Yeah, Desmond Child was writing, Love in an Elevator, and then would write like Who Let the Dogs Out and Cross and La Vida Loca, and would carry over, certain things across genre and across artists and work with producers that help, create sounds a little bit more subtle than that, the promotional component. I don't know rock, why that didn't happen, but they did have they always had tours, and I was into like all rock and southern rock and things like that. I remember going like Farm Aid concerts and World Series of Rock and Monsters of Rock, and, be able to sell out huge amphitheaters by having Poison and Metallica.
Yeah, you put a lineup together. Yeah. But I guess in like the true song creation or album release, you don't really see that in rock.
No, that's definitely a rap and hip hop and R&B strategy that I think was just brilliant. It built community and culture and all that. And then
so let's bring that back to the North Star metric then. Like, so taking this hip hop strategy, if you will. Yeah. What's your read on like the right metrics to be looking at then?
Yeah, look, I mean, there's core metrics and there's secondary metrics. Secondary metrics I think about as being, higher up in the funnel that are that lead to revenue generating actions, but maybe you collect more of the data, and so you can make optimization decisions quicker. And then there's but ultimately it all feeds into a conversion metric, right? And a revenue generation metric. And we're in business, like having a good click-through rate doesn't pay salaries. Selling products does, right? And so I think you always need to start with the deepest in the funnel metric, which in your case would be I don't know if you call it bookings or conversions or signups, and then kind of what that average revenue per transaction looks like, and then eventually like, is there a K factor, a referral component that comes from certain accounts, and is there a lifetime value built in where they're signing up for longer term engagements or repetitive engagements, scaling their business, like that's got to be the core metric for sure. But then I would kind of turn it back around in you and say like, well, what are some metrics that are leading indicators for whether someone is likely to engage with you? Is there a lead form? Is there downloading a white paper? Like, are there deep?
Yeah, and that's what I think is like, I think the revenue conversion is obviously like the most important metric, but it's like, that's an output. And then it's like, well, what do we have control over, or what are the inputs we can actually have influence on? And I think, and one of the things that I learned over time was, if the partner is not willing to, every now and then people for like data protection purposes say, well, no, we can't share, we can't share the email addresses of the people who signed up for your workshop. And I'll say, I can't do this then because it's not like you're getting my expertise for free.
Yep.
So my currency then is contact information.
Yeah, I mean, look, I would not look at that, whether you get email addresses or not, as a metric. I mean, I think that's built into your deal, right? Like either that's buying it, right? Like either you're getting those email addresses or the contact information, or you're not. If the answer is yes, you're getting them, then a KPI could be how many email addresses are you getting? Could be even higher in the funnel. Could be engagement. So how many people stick around through the entire webinar? How many people comment? How many questions you get? The more questions you get, the more the more valuable or the more likely that someone on that in that session ends up becoming a true lead. I think you can look at your building your own lead funnels, which is like, hey, if someone signed up for free content, going from free content to expensive engagement is probably a pretty big gap and void. And so if it's someone that signed up for free content, is there something that you can get them to sign up for, maybe one-on-one, that is a free assessment? And then from the free assessment, maybe you're selling them some digital, light engagement, a paid newsletter, a paid series of webinars, et cetera, but that's relatively light. And then from there, it's the upsell into your full service packages.
Sure.
I think that thinking about how to lubricate that lead funnel. And sometimes it doesn't work. Some businesses, there's just not capacity or efficiency to be able to kind of spin up each of those things. But in other businesses there are, and there's no shortage of companies out there that built digital programs or text-based programs or wrote books, and all of that what was part of like monetizing your ICP addressable market at a deeper level than just through a full final hefty engagement. I don't know that answers your question exactly with regards to the KPIs as much as it does think about like how you can build more monetization, a more kind of curved path to the ultimate transaction you're aiming for, to be able to offset some of your marketing costs along the way and build deeper engagement step by step.
Well, and I think what I learned over time, especially over the last 2 years, because I previously used to just say, yeah, let's do it, but I didn't have like a conversion funnel beyond the event, right? I just thought, okay, I'll show up, I'll talk. Some people in that may raise their hand at some point afterwards and say, I want to work with you. And yeah, that did happen, but I didn't really I had very little like control over what happened after the event. And so then what I was able to start doing was run the event, run a follow-up sequence. And through enough times now, I know the majority of follow-up booking, like meetings, happen on the second or third follow-up email, because people, I think, are just busy and it takes a couple of reminders. And each of those follow-up emails is providing some element of value in and of itself. It's not just saying, hey, come talk to me. And then I know once someone takes that meeting, the conversion timeline is oftentimes 2 days, or like to convert to a full paid customer, a pretty, well-paying, service package is oftentimes as short as 2 days, but really no more than 7 days. But I didn't previously go about it with that sort of like understanding of the entire process. I just thought, yeah, give me a stage, I'll do my thing, and it might work.
Yeah, look, and that's we talked a little bit about that, right? It's like having your hypotheses, and that was a hypothesis. That's fine. And then from there, you're like, okay, well, what's next? Like, what are the building blocks? And next, maybe gives you the tool to be able to engage with really big audiences that won't give you, customer information, but that you have a funnel from that event into like, hey, if you like the content here, I have this, free email newsletter, or I have this free, 3 15-minute pre-recorded content series that is going to tackle X, Y, and Z. And then you get, you start getting people leaning in and choosing to give you their contact information. I think, that certainly makes sense. I mean, look, you can look at things like retargeting, where if they'll let you host the session on an iframe, when people, sign up, you can probably drop cookies and retarget them on LinkedIn and programmatically. So there are definitely things that you could continuously do, both on the demand gen as well as lubricating your conversion funnel over time. Some of it's exhausting, and some of it's not. And you got to kind of map out priorities each quarter and just chip away at little by little.
Let's go ahead and begin our wrap up. First off, Dave, where can our listeners find you and learn more about you and about Postie?
Yeah. So, we work hard to publish great content on postie.com. So Postie.com. There's also, if you find content that's interesting to you, there's lead form where you can request a meeting with one of our team members or a demo. Best way to reach me is LinkedIn these days. Like that's kind of my communication platform of choice. There's built-in messaging. It's a really, really easy way to communicate and see who I'm engaging with, and you can get to know a bit more about me through my profile as well, and seeing who my connections are. Those are the two best ways to go.
Dave, who's one person who you want to give a shout out today? You can't say team. It's got to be one person. Could be a colleague, a mentor, a friend, a coworker, an advisor. Who do you want to shout out?
Yeah, for sure. It's my co-founder, Jonathan Nedenrip. He and I had worked together for about 6 years at Science prior, and just had a ton of respect for him. There's no question. He and I have started this company collectively together. We've grown together the last probably 12 years as colleagues, as friends, as mentors for each other. He's awesome, and I spend as much time with him as any other colleague, and he's just incredible.
Let's give our top one or two lessons or takeaways for the listeners based on our discussion today. I'll go first, and I'll toss it to you. Our topic today was the most effective channels to scale your ICP. I think the lesson I want to share is kind of bringing it back to, in understanding the ICP in the first place, figure out where you fit in your customer's wallet or in your industry's wallet. If you know how they spend already, it's going to make figuring out how to make your thing not seem so big and scary, not seem so big and scary. Dave, top one or two lessons or takeaways.
Yeah, no, I think that's step one. It's like you have to understand not just who your ICP is, but if there are multiple segments within your ICP. So think about ways to capture insights around your existing customer set. Or if you're a new business, figure out very quickly how you can capture customers and learn as much as possible early on, so you can start understanding what separates them from kind of the greater addressable market out there. And then two is look, it starts with I think a hypothesis around your business and why you exist, and I think we illustrated why Postie exists, and then that carries through to your marketing and your growth initiatives, which is you got to start with a hypothesis, so when you actually capture data on the back end, whether something that you tested was successful or not. If you don't start with that hypothesis and are mindful of what you're trying to prove or disprove, how can you possibly know whether something you did was successful or not?
My final question, which is how we end every episode on this show: fill in the blank. Entrepreneurship is blank.
I think entrepreneurship is a constant journey of personal growth.
So why do you say that?
I don't think entrepreneurship is any different than like raising a child, in so much as there are things that maybe there's a general framework of how you launch and build a business and how you take care of a human, but every human is different. I have 2 kids. They are similar in some ways. They are dramatically different in other ways, and I've had to learn how to engage with them, how to add value, how to coach them, how to mentor them, how to protect them in ways that line up with their own personal growth trajectory. And entrepreneurship is the same thing. You start with kind of a seed of an idea, and a company is, especially a startup or growth company, is kind of a living, breathing organism, and it is so much so because it's the people as much as the product. And so as you hire new people, as you onboard new customers, as those customers are like customer relationships are led by other people, you're constantly learning and evolving. And for me, like I think that's why there's nothing like I'd rather be doing with my personal career than being an entrepreneur, because it is opportunity to learn and develop and challenge and change, quite frankly, and grow every single day. that's been my experience anyhow.
Entrepreneurship is a constant journey of personal growth. He is Dave Fink, CEO of Postie. Dave, thank you for joining today and kicking off season 18 with us right here on Startup Hype Man, the podcast.
Thanks for having me. This is an awesome conversation. I hope your listeners find value in it.
That's a wrap on this one. Shout out to our guest once again for sharing their story with us. If what you heard impacted you, do one of three things. 1, let our guests know. Reach out to them directly. They love hearing from you. 2, leave a rating and review on Apple. Or 3, simply hit the share button and share this episode with one friend who you think would benefit from hearing it. Catch our full episode archive at startuphypeman.com/podcast. And if you want to make your pitch not suck, reach out to us through the website. That's all for this week. We'll catch you next time. Raj Nation out. Believe the hype.